So I want to thank you for taking the time to watch today's video, of course. I didn't bring my actual microphone with me that I usually bring, and hopefully the headphones will give you a decent sound. Usually I always try to bring them if I know I'm recording, but completely forgot this morning to bring them. So I will likely, of course, in the next video, change my background. But what I want to discuss today is something I think will be a little bit inspiring and motivational in a lot of ways, and I think it's brought me a lot of peace here recently. Um, and what I wanted to discuss is a little bit about music, and I've touched a little bit on music in some other videos, but I feel like this will connect with some of you guys as well. And you've likely seen some of my posts where I've sort of shared a little bit about music and how it's brought a little bit calmness into my life. So the reason, again, like each week I try to really think of some topics that I can share with you guys and that can give you guys a little bit of inspiration and motivation. And I feel like this was a good one. And again, I think it's relevant to a lot of how I'm feeling, and I think it again will give you some peace as well. So, as I've mentioned throughout my journey, of being a gay man and being, open about myself and understanding myself, music was a big thing that really gave me a sense of calmness. And it really has given me sort of an escape from everything else that is going on around me. And I'm pretty sure that you guys can relate as well. Whenever I was probably, back when I was in my early 20s, just coming out of high school, I was doing a lot of collecting with music and I was buying a lot of CDs. Again, even back then, CDs were not really like nobody was buying CDs really. It just wasn't that much of a thing anymore. CDs were practically, I don't want to say they're obsolete because you can still buy CDs. CDs are still being made, but as far as a form of consuming music, they're nowhere near, I mean, because everybody's listening to streaming, they're listening to music digitally. And, at that time, and even still today, I still listen to CDs. But at that time, I was in a place where I wanted to sort of take time and sit down and listen to music in particular. And so I was buying a bunch of different CDs. I used to go, at the time, we had a store nearby, or a Hastings, of course, that, sold. I used to love going to it. I think I probably mentioned Hastings in another video, but I would go to Hastings, and of course, they had music, movies, CDs, video games, all that. And I used to go and I would look around and sort of find, some CDs that I can listen through some albums and things like that. And it sort of became a little bit of a hobby of mine, which, if you guys know me, I'm pretty big with buying physical media. There's just, and I've sort of touched on it before, I think physical media has a certain kind of quality to it, a certain type of connection that you don't get when you're just listening to music, maybe digitally, or when you're, it's like the same thing with reading a book. Like, I love buying physical books and reading them. There's just something different when you buy something that is a physical object and having it detached from your phone or from your computer. To me, there's just something different to it. So, of course, at the time I was buying CDs. I was listening to a lot of different artists. One of the artists that I've listened to a lot at that time was, of course, Madonna. I listened to a lot of Madonna at that time. I still have a lot of CDs I bought at that time. I've showed you guys a little bit of my collection. But she was one of the ones that I think I listened to the most. Of course, the first CDs that I bought were more of Lady Gaga, and then I started to delve into other artists. And Madonna was probably the second one that I had really was listening to quite a bit, and I pretty much have all of her albums. There's a few that I don't have that I haven't gotten yet. I think probably the only one that I don't have is like American Life. Um, Even though there's some songs I like on that album too, that I've listened to, but I was buying a lot of her music. And again, a lot of the artists, of course, that I've listened to are very, very LGBTQ friendly, very gay friendly artists, gay icons, in other words, as what they're called. And of course, everybody knows Madonna is one of them. And her music, every time I've listened to it, when I go back and listen to it, because I've listened to pretty much all through her albums, so many different songs that I've listened to, and every time I go back and listen to her, it does take me back, to a time, to a calmer time. It seems like when I listen to him, especially, even though I was nowhere near alive, I wasn't even thought of in the '80s. I loved a lot of her old '80s music, and I had started buying a lot of her old albums. Bought, True Blue, excuse me, Like a Prayer, Like a Virgin, even, her self-titled album that was, I think it came out in 1984. And a lot of the music, when I listen to a lot of that music, it does bring a lot of calmness and a sense. It it's kind of a sense of nostalgia, even though I wasn't, alive at that time. A lot of that music, it just, again, it resonates still. It still connects. And again, I think it was, even at that time when I listened to it, I think being a gay kid, it just connects. You just connect with it because of the message in the music and the sense of freedom that her music always has. And even as you go like into the '90s, sort of her '90s style music, I remember very fondly listening to Erotica back in like 2014, I think is when I bought that album. Um, and then I was buying Ray a lot, Bedtime Stories, and all of those albums. And I just remember Erotica, I really loved that one. And just, again, that whole album, I had researched a little bit about that album, which was more of a sort of addressing a lot of the issues at the time, which that was early '90s when that album came out. And she was really going into, of course, sexuality and actually sort of doing a commentary on sort of the AIDS crisis that was happening around that time. And, sort of her friends, or the people that she was working with who were gay. And that was sort of what that Erotica album was, really connecting with. And so Erotica was one of the albums I think a lot of people are not as fond of from her, but I've always really kind of liked that album. And I guess because of the sexuality aspect of that is why I liked, that album. Listen to Bedtime Stories, as well. Human Nature. Again, the themes that have sexuality are usually the ones that I seem to connect with. Human Nature is probably my favorite one on that one, and I really love the music video to that. And then here recently, I had went back and listened to the album Ray of Light. And so a lot of the reason why I've sort of been really connecting with music a little bit more here lately is because of, my birthday here recently and turning 31. And so after turning, you know, 31 and just, approaching my birthday, like I remember, or it was last week, um, I was laying in bed and I was just like up really early in the morning. It was like 3 o'clock in the morning. And I was just, just kind of thinking about stuff. A lot of times when I get up early, I always cannot go back to bed because I'm thinking about everything in life. And so it was like the day before my birthday. And I, kind of been going through the motions with a lot of things. and I have a CD player. Um, I know I'm probably one of the only few people that have a CD player, but I do have a CD player that I had bought here recently, and it kind of looks like a vintage record player, but it's actually a CD player. And so after I got up early that night, I was just like, I'm just gonna put on a CD and I'm just gonna sit and listen. I'm just gonna try to get stuff off my mind, because a lot of times when I'll listen to something, it does. I don't. It gets stuff off my mind. In other words, so I would just put on Ray of Light, and I was listening to that. Sort of that CD, because I have the CD. I've had it for a while, and it just, after I listened to that, it brought such a sense of peace and a sense of calmness in me. And I just, again, I think when I listen to that album, like, the album is so good. Like, it's just the atmosphere of that album, which I know Madonna, when she did that album, was a sort of transitional period in her life. And at the same time, it was kind of a transitional sort of period with her music, because she was doing a lot of experimenting in her music, and that does show in that album. So that album is very atmospheric, very spiritual sounding in a lot of ways, which I know you guys have listened to it. And so I just laid in bed and listened to it, and I was just, again, it just connected with me in a lot of ways. It just, I've just really, because when you listen to that, like Ray of Light, I think some of the songs that I liked on that album were actually Little Star is one that I've always liked. I listened to that a lot of times. Uh, and then you have, there's a lot that's on that one. Frozen, of course. Uh, and then some of the ones that I sort of had forgot about, I had started, I was listening to them. Swim is another good one. And then you have, I'm trying to think, like the first song, Drowned World, Substitute for Love, like, just so many good songs on that album that connected with me. And again, it just, when you're laying in bed, listen to that, and it's just, there's just such a crazy feeling listening to that album, just going through, and just, especially, just late at night, it just, I don't know, it just, there was something about it. It just, it made me feel so much calmer. Um, and so here recently, I just sort of been going back and looking into some CDs that I can sort of listen to, and really, sort of look into some of the top CDs from different artists. Like here recently, I've been doing like some early '90s, or excuse me, late '90s, early 2000s sort of music. Going back and listening to Britney Spears' album. Uh, I was going to listen to Christina Aguilera's album. A lot of that, because I was really young at the time, and I remember a lot of that music still too, because I remember hearing it all the time. Especially Britney Spears, Christina Aguilera. Because when I was younger, I was friends with a lot of girls, and so they had. I remember those CDs very vividly at that time, because a lot of my friends in the neighborhood that I live in, they all had those CDs. I remember back then too, I had a CD player. It was like this really light blue. It was like kind of like a baby blue CD player that I had. I used to love that thing. And it takes me back to that time. And so that's kind of why I go back and listen to some of that music, as it does. Like, I was listening to the Britney Spears' first album, the Baby One More Time album, and oh, it took me straight back to that time, because I was probably, whenever that album came out, because I was born in '95, I was probably like 4 or 5 at that time. But I still remember a lot of that music at that time. Remember, that was a big deal at that time, even though I was pretty young, because around that time was, again, I was I was pretty much starting kindergarten. Well, it wasn't until 2000 I started kindergarten, but I do remember that music because I remember a lot of, even though I was pretty young at that time, I remember a lot of like the friends I had in my neighborhood. They did have that, um, and like I mentioned, there was a lot of girls that I hung out with, that had all of that music. I remember to listen to it all the time. But again, it brought me back to that time. I think there's just something so unique, something so different about music that it just does it. Going back and listening to it, it does kind of escape you. It gets you out of the headspace you're in now, and it does take you away to another time. And I think especially if you're somebody, like a gay man or anybody LGBTQ, especially the artists, such as those artists like, Madonna, Britney Spears, Lady Gaga, we do have a connection with their music because of, how freeing that music is and a lot of the messaging that's in that music. And I think a lot of people who are straight don't understand why that connects. They don't get the connection, that we have to that music. And it doesn't have to be those artists, it could be any other artist. But we connect with that because of the messaging that's in the music and how much freeing that music is when you listen to it. There is a freedom that comes from it. And so that's just something that I just, it brought me back to those emotions that I used to have before. Like a lot of the memories from like after I graduated high school and buying CDs. I have a lot of those memories that come back. Like I bought a lot of Mariah Carey CDs at that time. I still have them. A lot of the CDs I still have that I bought at that time, and it just brought back so much memories. I used to listen to a lot of Lana Del Rey. Like I have a lot of different kind of music. Celine Dion, all different kinds. And I've even, I don't just listen to, I listen to a wide variety of artists. Like I do have pretty eclectic taste in music, but there are certain types of artists that I can listen to pretty often because I connect with them a little bit more, and I love the message in their lyrics and their music. So what I do want to say with this is if you're going through a time where you feel like here recently, like I've said, I've just, since getting older, it's just like I know I'm not that old, but it's just like I've had this feeling of just really life just speeding up. Like it just gets faster and faster and faster. I'm sure a lot of you guys understand that feeling, but it's just like I feel a lot of times like I'm running out of time. Like I don't have enough time left. Like I don't know the direction that my life is going. I don't know what's next, and it's like I'm doing everything that I can. Like I'm building my business and I'm doing this and I'm finding myself, I'm accepting myself, and I'm doing all of these different things. But then at the same time, I feel like I don't have enough time. I feel like, you know, that what I want won't happen. In other words, I feel like it's just too late a lot of times. And that's probably not the case, but what I notice is that when I go and listen to music or when I, again, think about some of those times, it does kind of release a lot of that pressure that I have right now. And so I think, again, there's just something that connects when you have those artists that you can go back and listen to and that you can just feel a sense of peace from. So if you do kind of feel like you're going through a moment, take time to, just sit back and listen to some of the artists that you like, or listen to, music, and just sit back and listen to it. And that's what I've been doing here recently. I just put in a CD and let it play, not skipping through songs, just sitting back and just letting it play. And there's just something about it when you just sit and let it soak in. And that's the difference I think that CDs have, is that you want to take the time to listen to. When you put a CD in, it's not like the same as when you're listening through digitally, like on a phone, because you can just skip through songs like nothing. But when you go and listen to a CD, you kind of have to get up, you have to change the song. It's a different type of thing. So a lot of times you just want to sit down and just listen completely through the CD. And there's a different experience again. Like I said, I think there's a different connection with that. I'm going to in the future share a little bit of my collection that I have. Which you guys have seen some of it, but I do in the future want to share some of the collection that I have of CDs that I've accumulated. I've bought a few new ones here recently, but I hope this, really connects with you guys, and that it really, again, is understandable. If you know where I'm coming from, I'm sure you guys do. But again, thank you guys for really listening and sort of understanding where I'm coming from. Again, as we, you know I think you guys can connect because being gay men or LGBTQ, getting older, a lot of you guys I'm sure can connect to that sort of idea of what I'm mentioning. So thank you guys once again for watching. I hope you found this really inspiring in a lot of ways. But I'll likely share some of my collection here soon, and really share all the different music that I have, and maybe that'll give you guys some some sort of different things to listen to and to really think about. But thank you guys once again for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.